My mom didn't start the conversation with, "How are you?" She opened with, "You're going to withdraw from Harvard this semester." No build-up, no small talk, just a decision she'd already made for me. I was sitting on my dorm bed with my laptop balanced on a pile of laundry when she said it, and for a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. I'd spent my whole life trying to be the low-maintenance kid. Good grades, no drama, scholarships so she wouldn't have to worry. My sister was the one always on the edge of some new crisis. So hearing my mom say, calmly, like it was obvious, that I should be the one to leave school because my sister had failed out of hers, it felt like the floor shifted a few inches to the left. "She needs a chance to reset," my mom said, like we were trading shifts at a part-time job. "You can go back next year. Harvard will still be there. Your sister doesn't have anything." I remember staring at the little green light on my screen, at the lagging video of her face, and realizing she really meant it. This wasn't one of those guilt trip speeches you grow up with in a tight family. This was an ultimatum. Pick your degree or pick your family. I said no, not dramatically, not with some big speech. Just no. I wasn't dropping out. I thought that would be the start of a long fight, a messy compromise, maybe some cold calls for a few weeks. Instead, it was the last normal conversation we ever had. I didn't know yet that saying no that day would get me pushed out of my own house, or that years later, when my mom was sitting in a hospital waiting room asking me to help save her life, those exact words would be the only thing I could think about. If you want to know how I got from that dorm room to that waiting room, and why I answered her the way I did, you're going to have to hear the whole story. Before that call, before "withdraw from Harvard" became a phrase I couldn't hear, without flinching, my life was split between two very different versions of home. There was the actual house in Los Angeles, a rented one-story place in a neighborhood where you could hear other people's arguments through thin walls on hot nights. And there was the idea of home my mom kept selling to herself and everybody else. Loud, close, loyal, the kind of family that always sticks together, even when sticking together mostly meant pretending things were fine. I'm Ava, 19, first in my family to make it to a school anyone outside our zip code has heard of. And the only reason I ever even thought about Harvard was because a teacher in 11th grade circled a grade on my test and said, "You know kids from here can go to places like that too, right?" My mom, Karen, loved telling people I was the smart one in the family, but it was more like she was bragging about a scratch-off ticket she'd bought that turned out to be a winner. My sister Brooke was different. She was older, louder, the kind of person who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 3 new best friends and a free drink. For a long time, my mom called her "my wild child" with this half-exasperated, half-proud tone, like it was a personality trait, not something that could blow up in our faces later. Brooke tried college once, community college, classes that started later in the morning so she didn't have to give up her nights. She dropped out after a year and a half with a few credits, a lot of stories, and this deep, burning embarrassment that came out sideways as jokes. After that, she bounced between jobs: server at a sports bar, front desk at a gym, some influencer's assistant for about 3 chaotic weeks. And somewhere in there, when money was short and tips were bad, she found online gambling. At first, it blended in with everything else she did on her phone. A notification here, a flashy app icon there. I thought it was just another game. She'd shove the screen in my face at the kitchen table. "Look," she'd say, grinning, "I just won $50 while you were doing calculus." There were bright animations, confetti, fake coins raining down. What she didn't show me were the losses in between. I only started to realize how serious it was when little things in the house changed. The rainy day jar my mom kept on top of the fridge was suddenly empty. The power bill sat unopened on the counter longer than usual. I caught Brooke snapping at my mom when she asked about gas money. This sharp, desperate tone I hadn't heard from her before. My mom worked as a manager at a mid-range clothing store in a strip mall off the freeway. It was the kind of job that required her to smile more than she wanted to, stand longer than her feet could handle, and come home with just enough energy to eat, watch half an episode of something, and fall asleep in front of the TV. She talked about money in the way people talk about the weather, constantly, but like it was something happening to her, not something she had any say in. "I'm just trying to keep us afloat," she'd say, stirring a pot of pasta. "Once Brooke's on her feet, once you graduate, things will get easier." There was a college fund once, not a huge one, just a chunk of savings my mom had started when I was a kid. She liked to mention it in front of other parents, how she was putting a little away every month, even if it kills me. When I got into Harvard, that account suddenly became less theoretical. The financial aid office did more than I'd expected, but there were still gaps. Plane tickets, books, basic living costs. My mom filled some of those gaps from that fund and made a point of reminding me. "That money could have gone toward a new car, you know," she'd say, half joking, "or a vacation I'll never take." But she'd also tuck $50 bills into my hand when she dropped me at the airport, saying, "Get yourself something that isn't noodles once in a while." The night before I left for Cambridge, she threw a small get-together. Family, a few neighbors, some of Brooke's friends who treated it like an excuse to drink by the pool. There was a string of paper lanterns sagging over the backyard, a tray of Costco cupcakes, a Bluetooth speaker doing its best against the sound of traffic. People hugged me, told me to stay humble, to remember where you came from. My mom got misty-eyed when someone asked her how she felt. "Proud," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "Lucky." Brooke, already a drink and a half in, just laughed and added, "We'll see if she still remembers us when she's all Ivy League and married to some guy named Chad." It was a joke, but there was an edge to it. That edge got sharper once I actually got to Harvard. At first, Brooke's messages were supportive in her own way. "Send dorm pics." "Do they really make you read that much?" "Please tell me someone there is hot." But slowly, they changed. When I texted her about being stressed for midterms, she replied, "Must be nice for that to be your biggest problem." When I mentioned my work-study job at the library, she wrote, "I've already worked more hours this week than you will all month. But sure, tell me again how tired you are." Around the same time, the gambling app notifications started lighting up her phone more often. She didn't hide them, just shrugged and said, "It's fine. I know when to stop," in the same voice people use when they absolutely do not know when to stop. I'd call home from the dorm common room, trying to catch up, and half the conversation would be my mom talking about how hard Brooke was working, how the tips weren't fair, how the world was rigged against her generation. Then my mom would pivot, almost in the same breath, to telling me not to forget to have fun, not to burn out, not to turn into one of those people who only cares about their career. It always left me with this odd, hollow feeling, like no matter what I did, I was a little bit wrong. When my app, a small, clunky health tool I'd been building for a class, won a campus competition and came with a modest grant and a boosted financial aid package, I called my mom as soon as I left the auditorium. I could hear the store sounds in the background, beeping scanners, hangers scraping metal rods, muffled pop music. "They're giving you more money?" she asked, over the noise. "Like, actual money?" "Some of it goes straight to tuition," I explained. "Some is a stipend, and they want to connect me with an alum who works in healthcare. It's a big deal." She let out this long breath, half relief, half calculation. "That's great, baby," she said. "Every dollar helps. Maybe now I can stop robbing Peter to pay Paul." She laughed, but it wasn't really a joke. I thought that was the end of it. I didn't realize that conversation planted a seed in her head. The idea that my education wasn't just my future, it was also a resource. something that could be moved around on a mental spreadsheet labeled Family Survival. While I was in Cambridge worrying about passing algorithms, she was in LA listening to Brooke talk about One Last Shot. The bar where Brooke worked had changed owners. She hated the new manager, said he was killing the vibe, that she and a couple of bartenders could run the place better in their sleep. We just need capital, Brooke told her, according to what my mom would say later. We know the crowd, we know what sells. We're doing all the work anyway. Why not do it for ourselves? My mom had always wanted something of her own. She'd joke about it when she came home with sore feet, kicking off her shoes in the doorway. If I ever get out of retail, she'd say, I'm opening a place where I make the rules for once. So when Brooke started talking about taking over a small spot near Sunset, my mom didn't see risk. She saw an exit ramp, a way to stop clocking in for other people. By the time she called me with her plan, she wasn't improvising. She had numbers printed, half-understood projections, and a story she'd told herself enough times that it almost sounded reasonable. I didn't know any of that during that first conversation in my dorm. All I knew was she was suddenly talking about my enrollment like it was a flexible subscription, something we could pause and resume whenever life got tight. The ultimatum came later, after I pushed back, after I reminded her, probably with more sharpness than she expected, that my scholarship had conditions, that my financial aid depended on me staying full-time, that just take a year off wasn't neutral advice for someone in my position. Still, even with all the tension building under the surface, I didn't think she'd actually follow through. I thought she'd cool down, complain to her friends, maybe guilt-trip me in group texts for a while. I underestimated how scared she was, and how much of that fear she'd already transferred onto me without ever saying it out loud. When you grow up in a household where money is always almost enough but never quite, desperation doesn't arrive with sirens. It shows up as practical decisions that make less and less sense the closer you look. By the time my mom told me to withdraw from Harvard for just a semester so we could pull together as a family, she wasn't picturing me throwing my life away. In her head, she was redistributing resources. In my head, she was asking me to gamble my entire future on my sister finally not screwing up the next thing. Neither of us said it that clearly then. We should have. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe the collision was inevitable. But when she drew that line, Harvard on one side, family on the other, that wasn't the moment everything went bad. It was just the first time she said out loud what had been true for a long time. In our house, love and sacrifice were so tangled up that saying no felt like betrayal. I just didn't know yet how high the price of saying yes would have been, or how far she was willing to go when I refused to pay it. The thing about a sentence like, "You can withdraw this semester," is that it doesn't explode right away. It just sits there in your head while you go back to pretending your life is normal. After that call, I went to class the next morning like nothing had happened. I took notes. I nodded along when a professor made a bad joke. I went to my work-study shift in the library and shelved books for 2 hours, hands moving automatically while my brain replayed my mom's voice on a loop. She didn't call back that night, or the night after. When we finally talked again, it was about something stupid. She texted me a picture of a shirt from her store. Employee discount. Do you want this one for interviews? Like the whole Harvard ultimatum had been a weird dream we'd both had and decided not to mention. I answered like I was supposed to. Sure, looks nice. Thanks. For a few weeks, everything slid into this uncomfortable in-between. We didn't talk about me dropping out. She didn't bring up the bar idea directly, but there were cracks if you looked closely. Little comments about how expensive groceries had gotten, how Brooke's hours at work were cut, how the landlord was being dramatic about rent being late. I'd ask, "Are you okay?" And she'd always say, "We're fine. Just tired. Work hard, right?" That was her favorite phrase when things were clearly not fine. Money had always been tight, but now it felt like the walls were inching in. I saw it in the way she talked about the college fund, too. It went from your college money to that little cushion we have to what's left in that account in a matter of months. I noticed, but I didn't know what to do with that feeling. It wasn't like I could fly home on a random Tuesday and audit her finances. The first real sign that something had shifted came when I tried to book a ticket home for Thanksgiving. I was hunched over my laptop in the dorm common room, comparing flight prices, trying to find something that didn't eat the entire balance of my checking account. Even the cheapest option was a stretch. I called my mom, expecting the usual conversation where she'd complain about prices and then say, "Don't worry, I'll cover half. We'll make it work." Instead, when I told her the amount, she let out this short, annoyed laugh. "Ava, I can't do that right now," she said. "Do you know how much I'm juggling over here?" I hesitated. "I thought we were setting aside money for travel. You said—" "Yeah, well, that was before the rent went up and the car needed repairs and your sister's hours got cut," she snapped. "I'm doing the best I can. If you want to come home, figure it out. You're the genius, remember?" The word genius didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a charge she was filing against me. I did the math in my head while she kept talking. If I bought the ticket, I'd be down to nearly nothing. No cushion for textbooks next semester. No random emergencies. Just vibes and instant noodles. "Maybe I'll stay here this year," I said quietly. "Lots of people don't go home for Thanksgiving. The dining hall is doing a dinner. It could be fine." There was a pause on the line, a small silence that felt heavier than all the shouting from our previous fight. "Wow," she said finally. "First semester at Harvard and you're already too good for Thanksgiving with your family." "That's not what I said," I protested. "I just don't want to put us in a worse spot." "Flights are expensive, Mom, and you literally just said you can't help." "I said I'm tired," she shot back. "I said I'm doing my best. But you hear what you want? It's been 3 months and already you talk like you're visiting from another planet." I swallowed hard. "I'm trying to be practical." "You're trying to make excuses," she said. "Fine. Stay there. Stay. Enjoy your fancy, sad little campus dinner. Just remember who held everything together so you could be there in the first place." We hung up without saying, "I love you." Thanksgiving came and went. My roommate went home. The campus got quiet in that eerie way big buildings do when there aren't enough people in them. I ate turkey that tasted like it had been cooked by committee, laughed at a movie with a couple other students who were stuck there too, and tried not to think about the empty chair at our table back home with my name on it. After that, the tone of our conversations never went back to what it had been. They got shorter, more transactional. My mom asked about grades, but not about what I was learning. She asked if I'd found any side gigs, followed by half jokes about how we could use a successful startup founder in the family. Every mention of money came with a small twist, a reminder that my education was not just mine in her mind. Brooke's messages went from snarky to oddly quiet. Every once in a while, she'd send a picture from some bar, a blurry crowd, a neon sign, with a caption like, "Another night, send caffeine," or, "If you want to switch lives for a week, I'm ready." At 2 in the morning, her time there would be long voice notes, the kind you can tell were recorded after a drink or 3. Sometimes she was nostalgic. "Remember when we used to sneak cereal at midnight and watch trash TV?" Sometimes she was resentful. "Must be nice to have people handing you money to study while the rest of us actually work." Once, just once, she sounded small. "I thought I'd be further along by now," she said in a shaky voice. "Don't tell Mom I said that." I didn't. It was the closest she ever got to admitting things weren't working. A few weeks later, I woke up to an email from the bank. Low balance alert. I frowned, rolled over, and opened the app. The shared savings account my mom had opened years ago, the one that still had a few thousand in it last time I checked, was down to almost nothing. Not zero, but close enough that my stomach dropped. There were several withdrawals listed over the past month: rent, utilities, a payment to a place I didn't recognize, then another that definitely matched the name of a service bar vendor's use. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Then I called my mom. This time she picked up on the first ring. "Hey, you seen the new pictures I sent from the store?" she asked. "We got this horrible shipment of neon sweaters. I swear someone in corporate hates me." "Did you empty the savings?" I cut in. There was a pause. "Not long. Just long enough." "I used what we needed," she said. "What do you mean we?" I asked. "That money was for school." "You said that was for school." "School is paid for," she shot back. "You told me that yourself. Scholarships, grants, whatever. Meanwhile, rent is due now. Groceries are due now. Your sister had a slow month. I got fewer hours because they're cutting shifts. Life doesn't wait for you to finish your degree, Ava." "You could have told me," I said, hearing my voice go thin. "You could have asked." "Asked what?" she snapped. "Asked if it was okay to keep a roof over our heads? You'd have said yes, and then gone to your little budgeting spreadsheet and had a panic attack. I spared you that." "You didn't spare me anything," I said. "You just made the decision for me. Again." "Oh my God, not everything is about your autonomy," she said, the word clumsy in her mouth. "Sometimes adults have to make hard choices. I didn't blow it on purses and vacations. I used it to keep this family from sinking." "By using the only safety net I had," I replied. "By using the thing that was supposed to make sure I didn't have to drop out if something went wrong." "Nothing's gone wrong," she insisted. "We're just stretched thin. You're acting like I stole from a stranger. It's my account too. I put that money there. I can move it if I need to." Legally, she was right. Emotionally, it felt like standing in front of an open door and watching someone pack up your stuff without asking. "So, where does it stop?" I asked quietly. "If I get another grant, is that for the family too? If I pick up more shifts, is that just more proof I can handle losing support?" "You're twisting this," she snapped. "You always do this when you're scared. You act like I'm the villain. I am trying to make this work for all of us. You're up there at the nicest school in the country because I didn't give up when things got hard. You think I had anyone to lean on when I was 19? I think you're so used to surviving that you don't notice when you're stepping on me to do it," I said. There was a long silence. I could hear traffic through her car window, the faint beep of a checkout scanner somewhere. When she spoke again, her voice was flat. "If you're going to talk to me like I'm some kind of thief, maybe we need to take a break from these conversations. Focus on your big, important life. We'll figure ours out." "I never said you were a thief," I protested. "I said I felt blindsided." "Same difference," she said. "You made your choice, Ava. You stayed there. You picked that. So don't call me from your dorm room and act shocked that the rest of us are making choices too." That was the last real conversation we had. After that, my calls went to voicemail more often. When she did pick up, it was surface level. Weather. Work. "You sound busy, I won't keep you." The family group chat kept going without me. I knew because one day I opened my messages and realized I hadn't seen a notification from it in weeks. When I scrolled, it was gone. I didn't need to ask what happened. Someone had removed me. Maybe my mom. Maybe my sister. Maybe both. My number still technically worked, but the line between us had gone quiet in a way that felt more permanent than any dramatic hang-up. I didn't find out she'd also locked me out of my old room until much later, when a neighbor mentioned they'd helped her move boxes into your space and asked when I was coming home to see the changes. I smiled and lied and said, "Soon. even though I already knew that whatever home used to be had clicked shut behind me. It wasn't cinematic. There was no single slammed door, no shouted, "You are dead to me." Just a series of small practical decisions that added up to one truth. If I wanted to stay in school, I was on my own. So I leaned into the only thing I still had control over. I picked up an extra shift at the library. I started taking small freelance projects. Nothing glamorous. A clunky scheduling tool for a local clinic, a script to clean up patient survey data for a grad student drowning in spreadsheets. I kept tweaking the little health app I'd built for class, not because I thought it would change the world, but because it made me feel like I was building something that belonged to me. Every once in a while, when the ache got too loud, I'd open my messages and hover over my mom's name. I'd picture her at the kitchen table, rubbing her temples with one hand, phone face down beside a stack of bills. I'd think about calling and saying, "Let's start over," offering to send what little I had left. Then I'd remember the empty savings account, the plane ticket she couldn't help me buy, the way she'd said, "You made your choice," like I'd walked away from a party, not from a burning building she'd lit herself. In the end, I always did the same thing. I locked my phone, put it face down on the desk, and opened my laptop instead. If there was no one left to catch me, I was going to have to get very good at building my own net. Summer crept up on me while I was busy pretending everything was fine. Finals, project deadlines, those weird half-goodbye conversations you have in hallways when people are packing up for internships, that all blurred together. I told people I wasn't going home because it was too expensive to fly, which was true, but not the whole truth. The real reason was that I could feel something waiting for me in Los Angeles, and I wasn't ready to walk straight into it. My mom solved that problem for me. She decided to come to me instead. She didn't tell me she was flying out. She just texted one morning, "Are you on campus?" And 20 minutes later, she was standing outside the science building, squinting up at the stone like she was trying to decide if it impressed her. She looked more tired than the last time I'd seen her. A little thinner. There were faint gray strands at her temples I didn't remember. But when she hugged me, it was the same tight, familiar grip that used to make me feel like nothing bad could happen as long as she had a hand on my back. For a second, I almost forgot we were in the middle of something. We walked to a coffee shop just off campus because she refused to let me pay the absurd cafeteria prices. "I didn't fly all the way here to drink $8 coffee," she said, rolling her eyes. "I want somewhere normal." We sat at a small table by the window. She watched students hurry past in hoodies and headphones, her eyes tracking the logos on their sweatshirts. "Does everyone here walk that fast?" she asked. "Feels like they're all late for something." "That's kind of the vibe," I said. "Constantly 10 minutes behind." She smiled a little at that, but it faded when the drinks arrived and there was nothing left between us but steam and silence. "So," she said, stirring sugar into her cup without looking at me, "I've been thinking a lot since we last talked." My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. "About the savings?" I asked carefully. "About everything," she said. "About Brooke. About you. About this." She gestured vaguely at the building, the campus, my whole life. I probably didn't say things right on the phone. That was as close to an apology as she was willing to get, but it was enough to make my chest ache. I just, "I need you to hear me out before you decide I'm some monster." There it was, the word she thought I was using for her. "Okay," I said. "I'm listening." She took a breath, the kind people take before they jump into cold water. "Your sister is not built like you," she started. "You've been carrying yourself since you were, what, 12? You got yourself into this place. You figure out scholarships, jobs, whatever. You land on your feet. Brooke doesn't. When she screws up, she hits concrete." "That's not my responsibility," I said, more gently than I felt. "I know," my mom replied, surprising me. On paper, it's not, but in real life, it is all of ours. She's family. When one of us sinks, we all get pulled under. That's just how it works. She told me about the last few months in LA, how the landlord had threatened eviction twice, how the power company had started sending pink notices, how Brooke's bar job had turned into something more tenuous and weird, with new owners cutting hours and asking employees to invest in events. She got in deeper with those apps, my mom said quietly. I didn't realize how bad it was. I saw her playing, but I don't know what I thought. That she'd grow out of it, like a phase. She said phase in this small, ashamed voice, like she knew it sounded ridiculous. She started borrowing, my mom went on. First it was from me, then from friends, then from people you don't want to owe. When I found out how much, I almost threw up. And the thing is, she's not evil, Ava. She's not sitting there thinking, how do I ruin everyone's life today? She's just stuck and scared and bad at being scared. So you decided to fix it, I said. Like you always do. What do you want me to say? She snapped, then rubbed her forehead like she regretted it. Yes, I decided to fix it. I found a way that didn't involve her ending up God knows where with people we don't want her near. There's a guy who wants to sell his place. Small bar over near Hollywood. Good location. Loyal regulars. He's getting divorced. He wants out. He's willing to sell cheap if we take over the lease and some of his debt. It's a mess, but it's workable. Mom, I said slowly, owning a bar is not a rehab plan. It's a job, she said. It's a structure. She's good with people. She knows the business side. She could run the front. I could handle the books. We bring in one partner who knows what they're doing, and we turn this around. It's not glamorous, but it's ours. I could see it, the version of the future she'd built in her head. Her name on a lease instead of a schedule. Brooke laughing behind a bar she actually owns. Some version of me dropping by on holidays, proud of the family business. And where do I fit in? I asked. She met my eyes. You know where, she said quietly. We can't do it without capital. The bank laughed at us. I don't have anything left to borrow against. Your sister's credit is wrecked. The only asset we have that anyone cares about is you. I'm not an asset, I said. I'm a person. You're both, she shot back. You're my kid, and you're a walking success story that opens doors. You have grant money, stipends, connections. You have an acceptance letter with a name on it that makes people sit up straighter. You could take a leave. Just a year. You could come home, help us get this off the ground, put some stability under us. Then you go back and finish. You'll still be the girl from Harvard. They're not going to forget about you because you took time off for your family. That's not how it works, I said. My financial aid is built on me being full-time. My visa, my housing, everything is tied to being here. I leave. I might not get back in. And even if I do, I'd be starting over from behind. You're 19, she said, like that was the answer to everything. You have time. Your sister doesn't. I work 40, 50 hours a week, and I still fall asleep doing math on the back of receipts. I can't hold this together by myself anymore. I need help. Real help. Not just phone calls and, I'm proud of you, Mom. The words landed like little stones. I could hear the fear under them, the anger too, but mostly just exhaustion. It would have been easier if she'd come in villain mode, if she'd screamed and blamed and made it simple to hate her. Instead, she sat there in a cheap cafe chair looking like someone whose life had been slowly squeezing inward for so long she couldn't tell where the pressure was coming from anymore. You're asking me to gamble my one way out, I said softly, on the same person who's already proven she can't handle the money she has. I'm asking you to trust us, she said, to trust me, to believe that if we get one solid shot, we won't blow it. I didn't raise you alone just for you to turn your back when it's not convenient. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You didn't raise me alone, I said. I was there too. I worked. I studied. I kept my head down. I did my part. And now I'm asking you to do more, she said. Because you can. Because you're strong enough. Because your sister isn't. We sat in silence for a moment, the low buzz of other people's conversations filling the space between us. I thought about the nights studying by the glow of my laptop while she closed the store, the college fund she'd chipped away at for years, the way she'd bragged about me to anyone who would listen. I also thought about the empty account, the sudden shift from your money to our money, the way she'd made decisions for me without telling me until after they were done. I wanted to be the kind of daughter who says yes. I wanted to be the person who could somehow fix everything with one big sacrifice and never resent it. But I could see the future she was describing, and it didn't end with me sliding neatly back into my dorm a year later like nothing happened. It ended with me stuck in LA, degree half finished, resume weirdly lopsided, explaining to future employers why I'd left one of the best schools in the country to run a bar that might not even survive long enough to put on my LinkedIn. I'm not withdrawing, I said finally. Not for a semester. Not for a year. I'm sorry things are hard. I am. But this, I gestured between us, between Cambridge and LA, between possibility and panic. This is the one thing I've ever had that isn't built on denial. I can't give that up. I won't. My mom stared at me like she was trying to see if I was bluffing. When she realized I wasn't, something in her face closed off. You know what hurts the most? She said. It's not that you're saying no. It's that you don't even sound conflicted. I am conflicted, I said. I just don't think my conflict should cost me my future. Your future doesn't mean much if your family falls apart. She shot back. You're going to sit in your little fancy classes and pretend you don't know we're drowning? I've been drowning since you emptied that account without telling me, I said, more sharply than I intended. You just didn't hear the splash because it happened on this side of the country. Her jaw clenched. For a second, I thought she was going to cry. Instead, she reached into her bag, pulled out a folded stack of papers, and pushed them across the table. What's this? I asked. Reality, she said. Lease terms, debt numbers, what we owe, what it would take to keep this from collapsing. I thought if you saw it all laid out, you'd understand. I scanned the pages. The numbers were worse than I expected. It wasn't just rent. There were past due notices from utilities, small business fees, a high-interest loan with a ridiculous rate. Someone had scribbled notes in the margins. Call again. Ask for extension. Last warning. This isn't a plan, I said quietly. This is a list of fires. It's what life looks like when you don't have Harvard backing you up, she said. We're not all living in some campus bubble. Out there, people juggle. They rob Peter to pay Paul. They make deals. They hustle. I did it for you, your whole life. All I'm asking is that you do it for us once. Once is never just once, I said. You know that. She looked at me for a long time, her eyes scanning my face like she was memorizing it. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm in a way that scared me more than any yelling ever had. If you walk away from this, she said, if you choose your program and your app and your new life over the people who raised you, don't call me later and act surprised when there's nothing left to come back to. Are you saying I'm not welcome? I asked. I'm saying, she replied, pushing her chair back. You can't have it both ways. You don't get to treat us like optional background characters and then expect us to be waiting when it's convenient for you. We need you now. If you're not with us now, then... She let the sentence hang there. The rest of it was clear enough. She stood up. For a second, I thought she might touch my shoulder, kiss my forehead, do something that acknowledged this was hard for both of us. Instead, she picked up her bag, smoothed the front of her blouse, and said, Send me your schedule if you change your mind before the withdrawal deadline. After that, I guess we'll see." Then she walked out. I sat there with the papers in front of me and a coffee gone lukewarm, watching her cross the street through the cafe window. She didn't look back. A week later, when I checked my phone bill, my line was no longer part of the family plan. The shared savings account was formally closed. The key I still carried on my ring, the one to the house in LA, might as well have been a piece of scrap metal. The next time I opened our old group chat, I saw a gray line of text. "You are no longer in this conversation." No explanation, no parting message. Just that. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a door slammed in my face. It was my life being quietly edited like a document someone else decided they didn't want me in anymore. I wish I could say I picked up the phone and fought harder. I didn't. I went to the campus job board instead. If they had already decided I was on my own, then that was who I needed to learn how to be. What finally pulled me back toward Los Angeles wasn't guilt or homesickness or some big dramatic realization. It was a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to delete. "Call Mom. Birthday," my phone announced one morning while I was sitting in a small glass meeting room in Cambridge, going over bug reports with a grad student I'd started working with on a research project built around my health app. I stared at the notification until it faded, then at the empty space it left behind. By then, 2 years had passed since she'd walked out of that coffee shop. I'd finished my sophomore and junior years without ever going home on a break. We exchanged maybe 3 short emails total, all about practical stuff. Tax forms, a piece of mail that accidentally went to the old house, a question about whether I still needed something from my childhood room. I said yes. She wrote back, "Too late, I already donated it." Somewhere in the middle of all that quiet, my life had done what lives do when you're too busy surviving to narrate them. It moved on. The ugly little health app I'd built for class turned into my thesis project, then into a collaboration with a public health lab, then into a pilot with a couple of overstretched community clinics that just wanted anything that might help them spot problems earlier. It wasn't glamorous. There were no magazine covers, no viral articles about kid genius disrupts healthcare. Just small wins. A study showing our tool helped flag a few at-risk patients sooner, a grant that kept the servers running, a part-time contract after graduation so I could keep building instead of taking the first corporate job that came with a decent salary. I stayed in Boston after I got my degree, sharing a 2-small apartment with a friend who also couldn't quite afford to leave yet. I worked long hours and spent too much time in front of screens, but at least now it was on my terms. Harvard became a line on my resume instead of a cliff I was clinging to, and sometimes, in quiet moments, I'd think about the conversation in that cafe and feel a weird mixture of anger and relief. If I'd gone back to LA, if I'd tried to fix everything the way my mom wanted, none of this would exist. The app, the job, the tiny, stubborn sense that my life belonged to me. I still checked on Brooke and my mom sometimes, in the digital, detached way you keep tabs on people you don't actually speak to. Brooke's Instagram stayed public. For a while, the bar near Hollywood seemed real. Blurry photos of a small stage, hand-lettered drink specials on chalkboards, selfies behind a counter with a caption like, "Building something from the ground up. Wish us luck." My mom popped up in the background of a few posts, wiping down tables, grinning with that tired, trying too hard smile I recognized from her retail days. Then the gap started. Weeks without posts. Captions that sounded more manic than celebratory. "You wouldn't believe the drama with our landlord." "Some people don't understand loyalty." "Ever feel like you're one bad month away from losing everything?" I'd scroll, read, close the app, and tell myself it wasn't my business. I'd done what I needed to do. They'd made their choices. My job wasn't to stand in a remote control booth across the country trying to steer them away from every cliff. Then, one night, a few years after graduation, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Area code: Los Angeles. I almost let it go to voicemail. Habit 1, and I answered. Hello? There was a beat of static, then a voice I hadn't heard in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Ava? Brooke. Older, rougher around the edges, but still unmistakably her. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me was waiting for a punchline, for her to laugh and say she'd called the wrong person, that this was some mistake. You're really going to hang up on your own sister? She said when I stayed quiet a beat too long. That's cold, even for Harvard. The nickname hit me like a mild electric shock. What do you want, Brooke? I asked, keeping my voice flat. I don't have your number saved anymore. How did you even get mine? Relax, she said. I asked around. The internet isn't that hard if you know where to look. Plus, you're not exactly low profile these days. I almost laughed. Whatever she'd seen, it certainly wasn't my bank account. Seriously, I said. Why are you calling? There was a rustling sound on her end, like she was pacing or shifting in a plastic chair. When she spoke again, the sarcasm had drained out of her voice. It's Mom, she said. She's sick. For a second, the room tipped sideways. I sat down without meaning to. What kind of sick? I asked. The details came in fragments. Hospital, tests. A word I'd only ever heard in lectures and journal articles, suddenly attached to the person who used to sleep on the couch with the TV on because she was too tired to move to bed. Chemo, complications, insurance that covered some things and shrugged at others. They caught it late, Brooke said. She ignored stuff, you know how she is. Kept saying it was stress, or age, or needing more coffee. By the time she finally went in, they were talking about stages and scans and all that crap. My brain switched into the clinical part of itself that had listened to doctors talk about risk curves and treatment protocols. I asked questions. Brooke's answers were imprecise, but enough to build a mental picture. Not hopeless, but serious, expensive, messy. Why are you calling me? I asked quietly when she finished. Because you work in this world now, Brooke said, like it was obvious. You've got your little health app or whatever. You know doctors, you know systems. You probably know how to get us into some program, or get a discount, or something. She needs surgery, then some kind of therapy after. The basic insurance covers the cheap version. The good stuff? She let out a bitter laugh. That's a different story. I'm not a doctor, I said automatically. I write code. You write code for doctors, she shot back. Don't play dumb. We've seen the articles. Local girl uses AI to change healthcare. All I'm hearing is, I have contacts who could help my mother not die. The way she said, my mother, made it sound like we were talking about two different people. I didn't know you followed my work that closely, I said. We follow what we can, she muttered. Small-town news travels. Someone shared a link. Mom cried in the break room when she saw your face on her phone and pretended she just had something in her eye. The image made my throat tighten, but I forced my voice to stay even. She could have called, I said. She didn't need to send you. She didn't send me, Brooke said. She didn't want to bother you. She kept saying, she has her own life now. She's busy. She doesn't need to deal with this. Then she'd go quiet and stare at the wall for an hour. I got tired of watching that, so I found your number. There it was again, that messy mix of resentment and protectiveness that had always defined Brooke. Half accusation, half misguided loyalty. What do you actually want from me? I asked. Be specific. The doctor mentioned some clinical trial or a newer therapy at a bigger hospital, she said. Said Mom might qualify, but there's a wait list, paperwork, politics, whatever. We thought maybe you could, I don't know, talk to someone. Use your pretty email signature. Put in a word. If there's some charity fund or a grant or anything with your name on it, maybe they listen more. She went quiet for a second, then added softer. And if there's nothing you can do, at least tell me that straight so I don't keep promising her miracles I can't deliver. That last part caught me off guard. It was the most honest thing I'd heard from her in years. How bad is it financially? I asked. Brooke laughed without humor. We lost the bar a while ago, she said. Rent went up, numbers went down, investors bailed. Mom's been doing whatever she can. Extra shifts, side gigs, selling stuff. I'm piecing things together. Nothing stable. We're behind on a lot. If we don't get help, she gets whatever the cheapest option is, and hope it's enough. I rubbed my forehead. On my desk in front of me, a sticky note reminded me to call a clinic about renewing our pilot contract. On my screen, a half-finished slide deck for a modest conference presentation blinked, the title slide still open. Early detection in resource-constrained settings. The distance between my work and my family suddenly felt paper-thin. Does she know you're calling me? I asked. Not yet, Brooke admitted. She's stubborn. She keeps saying, we'll figure it out while looking at bills she can't pay. But if you say yes to even trying, I'll tell her. She won't say it, but she misses you. It's like there's always a chair pulled out for you in her head that you never sit in. I closed my eyes for a second. It would have been easier if Brooke had come in hot, if she'd blamed me from the first second, if this call had been all manipulation. Then I could have filed it under same old and hung up. Instead, what I heard was someone who was scared, in over her head, reaching for the only lever she thought might still move something. I can't promise anything, I said finally. I'm not going to tell you I can magically get her into some perfect program, but I can look at what her doctors are saying, maybe ask a couple of people I know to explain the options. Past that, it's going to be about insurance, income, where she's getting treated. I can't override that with a single phone call. So you'll… what? Read some stuff and get back to us? Brooke asked, suspicion creeping back into her voice. I'll meet you, I said, surprising both of us. I'm going to be in California next month for a conference in San Francisco. If you can get up there with her, we can sit down, go over everything. I'm not doing this over the phone like some customer service rep. San Francisco? She repeated. You think Mom can just hop on a plane? There are buses, I said. Trains. I'll cover the tickets if that's the problem. But if I'm going to put my name or my contacts on the line, I want to look both of you in the eye and hear exactly what's going on first. There was a long pause. She's not going to like it, Brooke said. She's proud. She hates asking for help. Yeah, I said. I know where I got that from. Brooke let out a breath that might have been a laugh if it had a little more air in it. Fine, she said. Text me the details. I'll figure out how to get her there. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my small office for a long time. On the wall in front of me was a corkboard with pinned-up graphs and patient feedback forms. On the desk was my laptop, open to an email draft addressed to a doctor I'd worked with, asking if he'd be willing to explain a treatment protocol in plain English for a family member of a friend. I could already feel the old currents tugging at me, the urge to fix, to smooth, to sacrifice first and deal with the fallout later. But I also felt something else. The memory of sitting in a coffee shop across from my mom while she slid a stack of debts toward me and asked me to trade my future for hers. This time, if I was going to walk into their storm again, I was going to do it with my eyes open. The day my mom and Brooke came to San Francisco, the city was pretending to be kind. Soft fog, not the sharp kind that cuts through your jacket. My conference had finished early, and I was sitting in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, badge still hanging around my neck, rereading the copies of her test results Brooke had finally sent after I nagged her for the third time. I'd already had 2 different doctors look at them, one from our pilot clinic back east, one I knew through the conference. Both said basically the same thing. This was serious, but not hopeless. Surgery, then a combination therapy. Not the top-shelf experimental stuff Brooke had implied on the phone, but still expensive if you were already underwater. When they walked in, I recognized them instantly, even though time had done its work. My mom moved more slowly, left hand resting lightly on the handle of a rolling suitcase, even though we were only meeting for the afternoon. Brooke's hair was shorter, the color grown out in a way that suggested she'd stopped keeping up appearances months ago. For a moment, seeing them framed in the hotel doorway like that, I had this absurd thought that they were just here to visit, that we'd hug, complain about the price of coffee, and argue over where to get dinner. Then my mom saw me, really saw me, and something in her face folded. "You look different," she said when she reached me. "Older, I guess." "You look the same," I lied, because the truth felt like too much for a first sentence. We found a quiet seating area off to the side, all neutral tones and expensive plants. I picked it on purpose, public enough that no one could completely lose it, private enough that we didn't have to whisper. My mom sat carefully, one hand going unconsciously to her side. Brooke dropped onto the couch beside her with the kind of heaviness that said she hadn't slept much. For a second, no one spoke. Then Brooke clapped her hands once, like we were starting a meeting. "Okay," she said. "You've seen the papers? You've talked to your doctor friends? So what's the verdict? Is there a magic door we can get Mom through or not?" "There's no magic door," I said. "There are options. Some good, some less good. But there's not a secret VIP entrance where I say a password and everything becomes free and easy." My mom let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Would have been nice," she murmured. "I told her not to expect miracles," Brooke said, jutting her chin toward our mom. "But she kept saying, 'Ava's smart. She'll know what to do.'" I unfolded the copy of the treatment summary I'd brought and slid it across the table. "Look," I said, "here's the situation the way I understand it. The first hospital you went to recommended surgery and follow-up therapy at their facility. That's one path. It's covered partially by your insurance, but leaves a big gap you'd have to pay out of pocket." "Dio." My mom nodded slowly. "They gave us a number," she said. "It might as well have been a phone number to another planet. There are also larger hospitals," I continued, "that are running trials. You might qualify for one or two. Trials sometimes cover more of the costs, but you give up some control. And there are wait lists. And travel. It's a lot." "But you know people there," Brooke cut in. "That's the whole point, right? You can get her moved up. Or at least noticed." "I can ask questions," I said. "I can email doctors and say, 'Hey, can you explain this in plain English? Is this place reputable? Are there charity funds she can apply for?' I've already done some of that, but I can't email them and say, 'Do this for free because she's my mother.' That's not how any of this works. They have their own lists, their own criteria. If they bend the rules, it's not going to be because some mid-level tech person from Boston sent a sad paragraph." My mom looked at the paper in front of her, not really reading it. "So what are you saying, exactly?" she asked. "That there's nothing you can do?" "I'm saying," I replied carefully, "that there are things I'm willing to do, and things I'm not. I can help you understand the options. I can help you fill out forms, find charity programs, get on lists. I can contribute some money. Not everything, but some. What I can't do is sign up to be the bank of last resort, or the guarantee that no matter what choices you and Brooke make, I'll keep writing checks to make it okay." "Nobody asked you to write checks plural," Brooke muttered. "We asked for help with this. With her. Once." I didn't say anything to that, not yet. Because there was a second folder in my bag, and I knew once I opened it, the conversation was going to tilt in a way we couldn't come back from. My mom noticed the folder edge sticking out and frowned. "What's that?" she asked. "More medical stuff?" "No," I said. "This is something else. But before we get there, I need to ask you something." I looked at my mom. "Do you understand why it was so hard for me to say yes the last time you asked me to give something up?" Her mouth tightened. "We're really going to do this now," she said. "I thought we came to talk about my treatment, not rehash old fights." "They're connected," I said. "You keep talking about family like it's this automatic thing, like I'm broken for wanting boundaries. But 8 years ago, you asked me to put my education on the line for a business plan that wasn't really a plan, and when I said no, you reacted like I'd betrayed you. I need to know if you get how big that was for me, because if you don't, then whatever we talk about today is going to sit on the same broken foundation." She rubbed her forehead, the way she used to when bills piled up. "I was scared," she said finally. "That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. The bar, the debts, your sister spiraling. I thought if I could just get through one more crisis, then I'd breathe. And you were there. You had options. You had this golden ticket I didn't even know existed when I was your age. It felt selfish, watching you hold on to it while everything else was collapsing. So you punished me," I said. "I told you what I needed, and you took away everything you controlled to make sure I knew how much that hurt you." "I thought you'd come home," she whispered. "Honestly, I thought you'd get scared or miss us, or realize how hard it is to be alone, and you'd come back. I didn't think you'd just disappear into that place and build a whole life without us." "I didn't disappear," I said. "You closed the door." There was a long, quiet stretch after that. Brooke shifted uncomfortably, like she wanted a cigarette. Finally, she said, "Okay, great. Everyone admits they hurt everyone. Can we get back to the part where Mom needs the surgery?" I looked at her. The tiredness in her face was different from my mom's. Less about age, more about bad decisions catching up. "We will," I said. "But there's something I have to put on the table first." I pulled out the second folder and laid it down. My name was on the front, printed neatly by someone in my company's compliance department. "A few months ago," I began, "I got an email from a bank I've never used. They wanted to clarify some details about a business application tied to my name. At first, I thought it was spam. Then they sent documentation." I opened the folder and turned one of the pages toward them. Application forms. The name of a small bar in LA I recognized from the background of Brooke's old posts. My name typed under co-owner. A digital signature that looked almost like mine if you didn't know it. "Someone applied for a line of credit using my credentials," I said. They attached a fake letter on my company's letterhead saying we were backing a hospitality tech pilot there. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to trip fraud alerts. Enough that my legal team had to get involved. My mom stared at the page, color draining from her face. "Please tell me this is a mistake," she whispered. "Please tell me they put your name on it as an example or—" "It wasn't a mistake," I said, looking at Brooke. "They traced the IP, the contact email, the login. It all points back to the same apartment in LA, the same devices, the same recovery phone number." Brooke's jaw clenched. "You spying on me now?" she said weakly. "You reading my Wi-Fi history?" "A bank was about to attach my name to a loan I knew nothing about," I said. "My company has investors who get very nervous when the word fraud shows up next to our CEO. I didn't go looking for you in their systems, Brooke. You dragged me in when you typed my name on a form." My mom tore her eyes away from the paper and looked at Brooke. "Tell me you didn't do this," she said, voice shaking. "Tell me this is some mix-up, please." Brooke didn't answer right away. For a second, I saw all the versions of her I'd grown up with flicker across her face. The charmer, the victim, the comedian. None of them stuck. She just looked tired. I thought we could fix it before anyone noticed, she said finally. The bar needed cash. The landlord was breathing down our necks. The vendors were threatening to cut us off. Mom was working herself into the ground. Everything felt like it was one bad week away from falling apart. And there you were, with your name all over the internet attached to words like innovation and funding and impact. I thought, if I used your name to get us a bridge, you'd thank me later when we paid it back. And Mom never had to know. You were going to tell me after the fact? I asked. When? When a reporter called me about my new venture in nightlife? She winced. I knew you'd be mad, she said. I also knew if I asked first, you'd say no. And I was out of people who hadn't already said no. My mom sagged back against the couch like someone had cut a string. You risked her job, she said, her reputation, after everything. I risked a bank's money, Brooke shot back, then immediately looked like she regretted the words. I mean, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to keep us from drowning. You keep calling it drowning, I said quietly, but you're the one jumping back in the water every time someone throws you a rope. Nobody answered that. The hotel lobby sounds filled the space between us again. Wheeled suitcases, low conversations, the soft hiss of the espresso machine. So, what happens now? My mom asked, eyes on the folder. Are you pressing charges? I swallowed. This was the part I'd been turning over in my head for days. The bank is deciding what to do, I said. They know I didn't authorize this. My legal team gave them everything we have. They're looking at whether it's part of a bigger pattern. I'm not going to lie to protect you if they ask for a statement. I'm also not calling the police myself. I'm not interested in making your life worse for sport. I'm interested in getting my name off anything that isn't mine. So you're just going to stand back and let them do whatever they want to my kid? My mom demanded. There it was, the flash of the old version of her, the one who could ignore a decade of context and zoom straight to, "You're hurting us." I'm not standing back, I said. I'm stepping out of a mess I didn't make. There's a difference. Brooke let out a shaky breath. You know they're going to look at everything, she said. Not just this. Every late payment, every transfer, every dumb decision. They're going to put it all under a microscope. That's how accountability works, I said, softer than she probably deserved. You don't just get judged on the one moment you got caught. My mom pressed her fingers to her temples. This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you, she muttered. Every time we come to you, it turns into a lecture, a trial. You didn't come to me, I reminded her. Your name came up when someone else started asking questions. You're here now because Brooke called, because you need something. Again. That landed. She flinched. Then she straightened a little, as much as her energy would allow. Fine, she said. We're clear. You're not our safety net. You won't lie for us. You won't sacrifice for us. Message received. But I'm still your mother. I'm sitting here with a diagnosis that scares me. Are you really going to look at me and say there's nothing you're willing to do? For a moment, all the versions of myself collided. The teenager desperate for her approval. The 20-year-old sleeping in the library because my support system had evaporated. The woman sitting in dull conference rooms arguing about trial protocols. The person who had learned, slowly and painfully, that love without boundaries is just another way to get swallowed. I'll help you fill out scholarship and charity applications, I said. I'll connect you with a patient advocate I trust who knows how to fight insurance. I'll put some money toward the gap, what I can reasonably afford without wrecking my own life. I'll get a second opinion if you want one. But I will not empty my savings, take out loans, or sign my company's name next to any of this. I'm not going to build my future on the same hole you're standing in. Not again. My mom stared at me, searching my face for a crack. You're really okay with that? she asked quietly, knowing I might not get the best treatment because you drew a line. My throat tightened. No, I said. I'm not okay with any of this. But I am done pretending the only choices in front of me are save everyone or be a monster. I can care about you and still not burn my life down for you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, no matter how many times you've tried to tell me they are. Brooke shook her head like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You sound like a podcast, she said, half sneer, half defense mechanism. Boundaries, choices, accountability. Must be nice to have all the right words. It's not about having the right words, I said. It's about finally believing I have the right to use them. We talked logistics after that. It felt almost surreal, sitting there discussing hospital social workers and grant deadlines while the air between us crackled with everything unsaid. I wrote down numbers, circled lines on forms, gave them the name of the patient advocate who'd already agreed, reluctantly, to take on a complicated family case. When it was over, my mom folded the papers carefully and put them back in her bag. She looked older than when she'd walked in. Not just tired, worn. You know, she said, standing slowly, when you were little and you got sick, I used to sleep on the floor next to your bed. Your father thought I was crazy. He'd say, "She's fine, she's breathing. Come to sleep." But I needed to be there, just in case. I didn't know what to do with that information. It didn't erase anything, but it landed somewhere deep anyway. I don't expect you to sleep on the floor next to my bed, she went on. I just thought that when it really counted, you'd show up the way I did. I am showing up, I said. Just not in the way you're used to. She nodded once, like she didn't agree, but didn't have the energy to argue. Brooke hugged me goodbye without warning. It was quick and stiff. More habit than affection, but it was something. They're going to make an example of me if this bank thing goes south, she said against my shoulder. You know that, right? They're going to follow the evidence, I replied. That's all I know. And you won't get in the way? She asked. You won't fix it? I pulled back enough to look her in the eye. I won't add weight to the scale, I said. But I'm done putting my thumb on it in your favor when you keep jumping onto the wrong side. She huffed out a laugh that sounded almost like acceptance. Guess I finally ran out of extra lives, she said. Took longer than it should have. When they left, I watched them go through the lobby doors and disappear into the city crowds. I had the sudden, irrational urge to run after them, to call them back, to say, forget it. I'll cover everything. I'll make it easy. Instead, I sat down, opened my laptop, and sent 2 emails. One to the advocate confirming I'd pay her reduced fee. One to my lawyer confirming in writing that I would not authorize any settlements or statements that implied I shared responsibility for the loan application. It wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic line, no slammed door, no security escort. Just a handful of choices, made carefully and in full awareness of what they would and wouldn't fix. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't acting out of panic or obligation or instinct. I was choosing, on purpose, where my responsibility ended. It didn't feel victorious. It felt a little like grief. But under that, somewhere quieter and steadier, it also felt like the beginning of something else. An answer to that old, impossible question my mom had thrown at me years before. What kind of person chooses her own future over her family? Sitting there in that lobby, watching the emails whoosh out into the world, I realized I finally had my own answer. The investigation didn't turn into the kind of headline Brooke always feared or secretly believed she deserved. There were no news vans, no grainy photos of her walking into a courthouse splashed across national sites. It was smaller than that, which somehow made it feel more real. The bank decided to pursue it. My legal team kept me updated in short, clipped emails. They've confirmed your non-involvement. They're moving forward with action against the primary applicant. You may be called as a witness, but only to verify your lack of consent. When I did end up on a video call with a lawyer from the bank, it was surprisingly boring. They asked me to confirm that I hadn't authorized the loan, that I hadn't invested in any bar in Los Angeles, that I hadn't written the letter attached to the application. They went through my timeline, my signatures, my corporate policies. At the end, the lawyer said, "We appreciate your cooperation, Ms. Price," in this neutral voice that didn't care at all that the primary applicant they were talking about was my sister. Brooke took a deal. I found out through a short text from her a few weeks later. Probation, restitution, no prison if I don't screw up. That was it. No greeting, no explanation. I stared at the words for a long time. Relief and anger tangled in my chest. I didn't want her in prison. I also didn't want her to walk away thinking there were no consequences. Probation and a payment plan for money she absolutely did not have was some awkward middle ground between those two extremes. I typed, "I'm glad you're not going to jail," 3 times and deleted it every time. In the end, I wrote, "I hope you take it seriously." She didn't respond. Apparently, we were back to being efficient in our silence. My mom's treatment moved slower, in that frustrating way medical things do when you're not paying to jump lines. The patient advocate I'd connected her with turned out to be exactly the kind of person I'd hoped she would be. Direct, stubborn, unafraid to argue with people in suits. She got my mom into a bigger hospital's program, not the fanciest one, not the Last Hope Miracle Clinic, but a decent facility with doctors who weren't burned out to the point of cruelty. They pieced together a plan from insurance, hospital charity funds, and a list of small grants that required more paperwork than should be legal. I covered a gap that would have wiped out my savings if I hadn't prepared for it. It didn't feel heroic. It felt like paying off a bill in installments. My mom texted me once, after her first round of therapy. "They say it's going okay so far," she wrote. "Thank you for helping with the advocate. She's intense." I stared at that message for a long time, too. It was the closest she'd come to acknowledging that my involvement had made any kind of difference. I wrote back, "I'm glad you have a good team. I hope you're resting." She replied with a thumbs up emoji. I tried not to read too much into the fact that it was the same reaction she used to send when I texted her test scores in high school. Months went by like that. Life divided itself into 2 tracks. On one track, I went to work, sat in rooms with whiteboards full of diagrams, argued about model performance and ethics with colleagues who used terms like operationalization and scale as if they were everyday words. Our app got picked up by a few more clinics. We published another study with modest results. I spoke at a couple of conferences, the kind that give you those lanyards you forget to take off until you see yourself in a mirror hours later. On the other track, quiet and messy and always there, my mom moved through treatment. Some days she'd text little updates. "Blood work good this week. Side effects rough. Doctor says we might be doing another scan soon." Other times, I'd hear nothing for weeks and find out through the advocate that she'd been in and out of the hospital for complications. Brooke floated in the background of those updates like a ghost. The advocate mentioned she came to appointments sometimes, sat in the corner scrolling on her phone, occasionally erupting into arguments with billing when numbers didn't make sense. "Your sister is a lot," the advocate said once, choosing her words carefully. "But she loves your mother. That much is obvious." It was not a compliment, but it wasn't entirely a criticism either. I didn't see either of them in person during that time. It wasn't a rule I said out loud, just a line my body refused to cross. I sent money when I could, and forms when they needed them. I answered medical questions in plain language. I took calls from the advocate when she needed me to translate some tech jargon for doctors who were trying to understand how our app might or might not be useful in my mom's case. I did not visit the hospital. I did not sit by the bed. I did not crawl back into the role of emotional shock absorber I'd lived in for so long. Guilt showed up anyway. It came in quiet waves. When a colleague complained about a pushy parent and I thought, at least yours still calls? When a patient in one of our studies mentioned their grown child driving them to every appointment, when I filled out another emergency contact form and left the line blank again, I started talking about some of it out loud. Not to my mother, not to Brooke. To my therapist first, who looked at me one day and said, "You keep using the word punishment like you're the one handing out sentences. What if that's not what's happening here?" "What else would you call it?" I asked. "You set boundaries," she said. "They ignore them, and reality responds. That's not karma, that's consequences." And then, later, to other people. Not in some glossy, go-viral confession video, more like small, deliberate pieces. A panel on healthcare and ethics where I mentioned, carefully, that my interest in access wasn't abstract. A podcast invite from a friend that turned into an episode about what it means to come from a family that doesn't have a safety net, and how that warps your sense of what you owe everyone. The story I told wasn't a revenge fantasy. I didn't list every bad thing my mom had said, every irresponsible choice Brooke had made. I talked about patterns, about the way some of us grow up learning that family means the people you're not allowed to disappoint, even when disappointing them is the only way to survive. I didn't expect many people to listen. It wasn't sensational. There were no screaming matches or cinematic betrayals, just me, talking in a steady voice about bank accounts and plane tickets, and the quiet ways people can cut you out long before they stop talking to you. But the episode found an audience anyway. Not millions, not a global frenzy. Just enough people for my inbox to fill up with messages that sounded painfully familiar. "My parents emptied the account I thought was for my tuition," one person wrote. "I went anyway. I still feel guilty." "My sister used my name to get a lease," another said. "When it went bad, they all blamed me for not fixing it." Over and over, the same themes: money, obligation, the way help morphs into debt when it's never allowed to be enough. I didn't start a foundation. I didn't have the kind of money that lets you slap your name on a wing of a hospital. But I did something small that felt honest. I created a resource page on our company site, off the main navigation, not plastered on the landing page, with links to patient advocates, low-cost legal aid, financial literacy tools, and mental health resources for people navigating exactly the kind of knot I'd been stuck in. I paid a writer to help make the language clear and welcoming. I put a note at the bottom with a simple line: "If you grew up feeling like you were responsible for fixing everything, this is for you." It wasn't revenge. It was a way of taking the mess of my life and turning at least part of it into a map for someone else. The closest I ever came to seeing my mom again was an almost visit a year after her treatment started. I was in Los Angeles for work, meeting with a clinic we were trying to bring onto our platform. The nursing home where she'd ended up was 15 minutes away by car. I knew that because I'd looked it up the second my flight was booked, then pretended for days that I hadn't. After the meeting, I sat in a rental car in a strip mall parking lot, engine off, staring at the directions on my phone. 15 minutes, 6 turns, 1 decision. I pictured walking into the pale, overlit lobby. I pictured signing in, getting a visitor sticker. I pictured her face when she saw me. I pictured the conversations we might have, the apologies that might come or might not, the decades-old arguments that might resurface, the possibility that she would say, "I knew you'd come. I knew you wouldn't leave me here." I thought about what that would feel like, to step back fully into the circle I'd spent so much energy stepping out of. To become Again, the person everyone assumed would eventually show up and make it okay. I sat there long enough for the sun to move an inch across the sky and the rental car to get too hot. Then I put my phone down, started the engine, and drove back to my hotel. I didn't visit. I didn't text to say I was near. On the flight home, I stared at the seat back in front of me and waited for the wave of regret I'd always been warned about. It didn't come, at least not in the way I'd been taught to expect. What came instead was a dull ache and a strange, stubborn clarity. I could care about her without erasing what she'd done. I could hope her treatment worked without promising to be the one holding her hand in every waiting room. I could let myself be sad about what we didn't have without trying to build it from scratch every time guilt knocked. Sometimes people ask me, in interviews or panels, if I've forgiven my family. The word makes me uneasy. It sounds too much like wiping the slate clean, like pretending the ledger was never written. I usually say this instead. I understand them better now. I understand how fear and scarcity and pride twisted my mom's sense of what love looked like. I understand how shame and insecurity pushed Brooke into decisions that hurt everyone, including herself. Understanding doesn't mean I want them back in my life the way they were. It just means I don't have to carry them like a live wire anymore. My mom once told me, in the middle of an argument, that choosing Harvard over my family was something I'd regret forever. She said it like a prophecy, like she was handing me a curse I'd unpack when I was older and lonelier and ready to admit she'd been right. I think about that sometimes, usually on quiet nights when the apartment is too still and the glow of my laptop feels like the only light in the room. Do I regret it? Do I wish I'd gone home, back to the bar, tried harder to keep us glued together? No. I regret that those were the choices in front of me. I regret that love and obligation were so tangled that any move toward myself felt like betrayal. But I don't regret the moment I finally said, I won't trade my future for someone else's second chance. If there's any lesson in all of this, any reason I keep saying yes when people ask me to talk about it, it's this. Choosing yourself isn't the same thing as abandoning the people you love. Sometimes it's the only way to stop everyone from falling into the same hole again and again. You are not evil for wanting a life that isn't built on constant emergency. You are not selfish for drawing a line where your responsibility ends. And if someone tells you that you'll regret not setting yourself on fire to keep them warm,